I want to talk about why and how to localize your VR games, because if you want, for example, to tap into the Russian market, you probably should localize to Russian. But before I start, a little bit about me and where I'm coming from. As I said, my name is Steffen Roemer, and I've already roughly 15 years experience as app and game developer. And during this time, I've seen a lot of problems and pitfalls into the localization, so needed to localize a lot of games. And around 5 years ago, I wanted to start a game company with a good friend of mine. And in the process of doing so, we found out that there's several tools that we would like to have missing, so we started to create them for ourselves. And never finished this, basically. So we, at first, created an A/B testing platform that we've sold a few years ago, and then around 3 years ago, we started to create a platform called Applanga with the aim to automate the localization process. So why should you localize your games? So if you develop in English and only target English-speaking markets, you maybe shouldn't, but if you, for example, want to tap into the Russian market or want to have some success in Europe, you probably should speak the native languages. Many people come with the argument that most people in the world speak English anyway, so why should you localize? That's true in a business world, but it's not true in all age groups. So, for example, I'm from Germany, so we learn English in the 5th grade, but it only gets to usable state at the 7th or maybe 8th grade. So you lose a lot of the younger players, and also many of the older players, they don't learn English. Also, in day-to-day spoken languages, there's far more people speaking Spanish or Mandarin. So there's roughly 25 to 30% of the people of the possible target groups reached if you only have your game in English. This number gets even smaller if you want to focus on a VR AR market, because VR and AR is still a lot bigger in Asia, so it's also no native English-speaking market. Also, especially in VR, you have relatively short play sessions. So if you cannot manage to explain your game quickly and easily, you might lose players and they might not come back because they get a bad impression, and why should they try again? So try your best to explain the game as good as possible, and what could be better than to do it in a native language. So you can say, if the game is in English, so the engagement is just higher. So I guess we can agree localization is a good thing, but how can you do it? I don't know how many of you ever localized the game. It's mostly always the same. So we see it as 5 steps. You can say 7 steps, but they are always the same. So typically you have static text in your game. You need to extract the static text, put them into some kind of text files. Typically you convert them then either to Excel or to some XML format that you can send off to translators. And then you somehow need to provide them context, because without context, a translator cannot be much better than Google Translate, because how should they know what the game is about? How should they know what's the look and feel of your game is? For example, if you see the screen with a little dog simulation or a little pet simulation, and it's pretty obvious that food in this context means dog food, but how should a translator know if he has never seen your game? So you need to provide context, and one way to do this is provide context through demo builds. That's working mostly okay if you do mobile games. It's not working so well if you do VR games, because it's quite unlikely that any translator will have the proper VR hardware. There's so many and so expensive devices, so they cannot have it. So another common way is to provide context through descriptions. That's okay and fine, and it's working well, but if you ever have pitched your game or tried to explain your game, it's pretty hard to do that. So it's hard to explain a game in a few simple sentences, and it's a lot of work to do this. So if you need to describe every little text, like this is the main menu, my game has this and this look and feel, so there's a lot of work involved, and it's pretty hard to do. Another quite common way for normal mobile games is to provide context through screenshots, and that's fine. It's just a little complicated for VR because with your VR headset on, it's not so easy to take screenshots, and even if you have some custom code that can do it, you have the problem that you take screenshots from two separate cameras, so you need to decide from which camera to choose. You need to change the field of view, or you have screenshots like the one on top, which might be also quite confusing to the translator, and it's also pretty hard to see anything on this kind of screen because you lose a lot of actual screen space. If you somehow manage to do this, if you wrote some custom code that maybe can do it, you send the stuff off. At some point, you get back the translations from the translator, need to reintegrate it into your game, need to probably convert some Excels back to your local file formats. There's also a lot of things that can go wrong, wrong formatting, wrong file types, wrong spacing. There's so many wrong encoding. So there's a lot of error potential. If you manage to do so, yeah. You should test before doing this, and testing is again a problem. How should you test localizations if you don't speak the language, and you can also not hand it off to the translators because they don't have the hardware? So you need to do it in-house, and it takes quite a while, and you can never be really sure that everything's all right if you don't have native speakers. Then there comes the release, which again takes quite a while. So if you release for just some app stores and with the testing, and that can take a few days, can take a few weeks, and then there's the maintenance, which means basically you update your game all the time and you need to repeat the steps all the time. So there's a lot of repeated work involved in this, and that's why we thought we should try to automate all the things. And that's basically why we created Applanga. Applanga comes as an SDK that's different to most other localization solutions. So you have an SDK that you can put into your game. It automatically finds all the text, uploads them to our string management platform, where they then can be quite conveniently translated. Also, we have ways to take screenshots automatically and link the text that you have in the screen with the screenshot. So this looks like this. So on the left, you have the screenshot. On the right, you have the filtered text that's all visible on the screen. If you hover over some elements, you see which ID is used for which text. And if you click on it, you can directly edit on our dashboard. And the big benefit of this is that it's live all the time. So whenever you've changed something, it's directly pushed back into the app or the game. So you can directly preview it and can see, for example, if some text is too short, if some text is too long. And you can even do text updates and fixes while the game is already released. So if your customers complain, no, this doesn't make sense in Russian or something, then you can simply fix it in a matter of minutes instead of waiting for a long update cycle. Also, with the screenshots, you can make the screenshots in multiple languages and put the whole QA into the browser and can have actual native translators do the proofreading in the browser with the full context, so you can really make sure that your translations are right in all the languages and that they really make sense and cover the look and feel and the essence of your game, basically. And as I said, you can have translation updates all the time, so everything is live all the time, so that's a big benefit. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks a lot, Steffen. Does anyone have any questions? Oh yeah, Alexei, over there.
Thank you for your talk. Is it possible to use Applanga not only with VR experiences, but also to use them consistently with, for example, web
Yes.
web experiences or something?
Yeah, so we started like I have a game development background, but the first products that we had were apps. So we are existing since 3 years. So we have many app customers. Then we started with normal mobile games, and then just in the last maybe half a year, then we added some extra features for VR and AR. But yeah, it's working for.
So we can use a unified dashboard for different types of applications.
So we have a lot of customers that do their apps, games, and website, everything in Applanga. So we have an open API for everything that's not covered. You can also just use the API, basically.
And multiple localizations or internalization to different languages is available from the one dashboard. I mean that different translators work with their languages, right?
Yes, so there's different options. So we don't necessarily provide the translation. So you can have your favorite translation agency, for example, for every language. Either you invite them to the dashboard, or you can also export the stuff from the dashboard. But the big benefit is that there's no developer that needs to do something, but your project manager or localization manager can just export from the dashboard, send to the translation agency. But more and more, we also have customer requests that just ask us to do the translations, and then we are working together with agencies and put the stuff back in.
Yeah, great. Quite versatile. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.